Music was very central to the civil rights movement. It was a separate kind of protest that could easily be shared with many people. It was able to connect people with differing views and experiences to the shared cause of a movement, and because of this, these protest songs are some of the most powerful and influential tools of resistance to be wielded. Careless Love is a song about how being carelessly in love will lead to heartbreak. The song itself has unknown origins but was commonly sung in the blues or jazz genre. Despite this, the perseverance of the song has led many artists to adopt it and convert it into their genre, leading to versions of Careless Love in pop, folk, and country genres. This song's meaning does not connect specifically to the civil rights movement. Instead, it establishes the folk genre and is an introduction to a singer who is extremely interconnected with the civil rights movement. Pete Seeger was an activist and an American musician who embodied the persona of the protest singer. Pete Seeger was heavily involved in the civil rights movement. He used his platform as a singer to promote the movement and to give it the music that helped carry its spirit throughout its supporters. His most important contribution to the movement was the creation of the song We Shall Overcome. We Shall Overcome is a song that eventually came to symbolize the civil rights movement. It was sung at many marches and protests as a reminder of unity and as a source of strength and the spirit of perseverance. Pete Seeger's popular melody continues to be influential in the modern world as the anthem of protest and change-making. Careless Love's function diverges from the norms we have studied in class because of its detachment from the actual movement. The song most likely was not sung at protests or in civil rights rallies because it could not be directly related to the issues in the civil rights movement. However, the song is similar in function to other civil rights songs because of its folk music sound. The folk genre was very common in the civil rights movement, which makes the sound of Careless Love one that is tied to the roots of other folk songs more directly connected to the civil rights movement. The song Birmingham Sunday is about the bombing of a church in Birmingham, Alabama. The bombing killed 4 young girls, who Baez gives a voice by telling their story through her singing. This folk song was written in a very unprejudiced way to highlight the tragedy of 4 innocent lives being snuffed out by discrimination and hate. In this song, Joan Baez uses symbolic meaning to tell the story of a race surrounded by violence. She wanted to get across the message that even though the community was grieving, they were not going to be scared from their cause. Instead, they were going to rise up stronger and use this tragedy to fight for an end to the bloodshed. Joan Baez was a singer, songwriter, and activist in the era of the civil rights movement. She was very passionate about civil rights, and her songs often contributed to the anthems widely recognized as the protest singing of the civil rights movement. Joan Baez has dedicated her life not only to civil rights, but many worthy causes like human rights, nonviolence, and the environment. This song was so influential because it told the story of a great injustice. It gave an example of what the people of the movement were fighting to end, and because of that, it gave protesters strength and resolve to carry on. Birmingham Sunday's function is different than the other 2 songs because the song directly relates to the civil rights movement. Her song has a direct and personal place in the movement because you can easily connect it to the church bombing and a cause to fight for. This song's style is different than the other songs because it is in a presentational format. Most civil rights songs are in the participatory format and often lead to a call and response that allows people to participate in the song instead of just listen to it. This means that this song was not so commonly sung by the people, but instead just listened to. I'll Be Alright Someday is a general song about how Reverend Gary Davis truly believes that in the end things will be alright. This song is upbeat and optimistic in a time when that attitude was hard to find. Throughout the whole song, there is a steadfast belief in hope, a belief that doesn't always follow through. In this time, things were very hard for African Americans, and so sometimes having hope was the only thing that could make the future better. Reverend Gary Davis takes this dilemma and gives it a positive spin. He makes it into a belief instead of a burden. I'll Be Alright can connect to the civil rights movement because its main message that everything will be alright someday was a view that many people held to help them through the hard and violent days of the protest movement, and the feeling of hopelessness that often overshadowed the ultimate goal of equality. Reverend Gary Davis performed this song in a time when the blues genre was just developing and gaining popularity. Reverend Gary Davis taught many influential artists of his time, like Davis Bromberg and Larry Johnson. His work connects to a more modern time because of his influence on recent artists like Bob Dylan and the Grateful Dead. The blues genre connects to the civil rights movement because its roots go all the way back to African villages and slave communities. The call and response part of blues music goes back to African musical traditions, while another aspect of the music is based off African American religious music called spirituals. The first appearance of blues can be traced back to right after the ending of slavery. This often means the blues genre is associated with the first freedom that slaves experienced, and their thoughts, feelings, and experience from that time forward. These songs are the soundtrack to the greatest protest movement in this nation's history. The songs I've learned about are very diverse in how they affected civil rights, but they all have a pivotal role to play. Without the songs and anthems that supported the movement, getting the struggles and issues that were affecting the Black community out to the nation would have been so much more difficult.